Good afternoon to you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us for the second in the series of the Dennis Pantin discussion series, which we started in February, because we think that as the CRF, and in particular at this time, we needed to expand the forum for as many of us as possible to join in a discussion, in an ongoing discussion about what we think about governance in our country, and moving on from that, what we think about, issues related to the reform of the Constitution. Because we think that these are ongoing things that we have to talk about, and not necessarily should be the remit of specific individuals who sit in a particular place with a particular agenda to see about. We feel that it should be opened up to everybody. In our first discussion in February, we spoke about the whole notion about the coalition government. Is Trinidad and Tobago ready for a coalition government? And what was interesting for us of the working committee of the CRF is that subsequent to our having that discussion, and Mrs. Suniti Maraj Best was the speaker on that occasion, was that there were at least two other forums dealing with the same thing. So we proud ourselves in terms of starting off things. Today we are looking at the issue of representation, parliamentary representation, and what we want of it, because we are in a period, we said that we want to change, and therefore the change that we want is a change that we have to make as a people. And if we want to look at the whole issue of what Parliament is, what the representatives that all of us, I think most of us voted in one way or the other for just over a year ago, then we have to start talking and thinking, and by extension influencing what the people we elect to represent us are doing. And so in our discussion this afternoon, we, as you would have seen from our advertisements, we invited two people whom we know. One of the things that happened with that announcement that we had was that I remember my colleague asking, us, what designation we're going to give to these people. And then we ended up not giving a designation, And then this afternoon I asked the one person who is here now, who I should say you are. And we ended up not having anything to say about who, Clyde Weatherhead is. But that to me is the strength of the individuals who we have, because we spoke of them not because of their designation, but because we know who they are and we know the passion that they feel about good governance in our country, and their commitment to, hi brother, afternoon, and their commitment to ensuring that and to fighting really for good governance in our country. So it is in that respect that I, in the first instance, I'm introducing Brother Clyde Weatherhead. He has been around for a very, very, I know him for a very, very long time.
This question of representation is something that I have been involved in. Not at the level of the politics in that way, but I have been able to move from a member to a president of the second largest trade union in the country. And I think I was able to do that on the basis of representing people in some kind of efficient way. One of my political colleagues keeps telling me when we discuss political matters that I keep referring to my trade union experience. Well, that is my experience. Everybody in Trinidad and Tobago has their own. And from each type of experience that we have, we can all draw lessons from it and apply it to wherever we are at this point in time. Now, since 1970, I've also been involved in politics. And some people think I've became involved in politics when I joined the Congress of the People. But that is not so, because electoral politics is not the only politics there is in the world. I would like to discuss this question of what people should expect from their MPs, which is really the issue of representation. With respect to a few matters, because the invitation said that we could say what we think generally and so on, give a lot of latitude, but there's an issue going on in the world that is reflecting itself in many different phenomena. The most recent is the explosion in the Middle East among the people. And prior to that, there was another explosion in this part of the world, but where they speak Spanish, in terms of South and Central America and so on. And the phenomena of the governments in Venezuela, etc., etc. And some people have referred to these two sets of phenomena as revolution, and some people say, what's that? Well, basically, what are people demanding? People are demanding to have some role in deciding their own future. And that's what people want. And the last time I spoke in this room at a session organized by the people on this banner here, it was on the question of war and peace, and I raised a thesis that after the Second World War, the world had issues to complete, which it never completed. And in respect of governance, it's the same thing. You can't defeat fascism in the world and not build democracy after that. And if you don't, then you end up in a crisis situation. And that's what has happened in terms of the entire politics. And that's why I say there's a crisis of politics and political process in the world. And we are experiencing it here. It reflected itself in Patrick Manning and his plan to convert this state into a very unique one-man autocratic state with his draft constitution, where one person would hold all the power and cabinet would be an advisory body to him and so on and so on. So that what happened in 2010 in our elections, as I have said elsewhere, is not merely an election. In 2010, we defeated a direction in this country. And it's important that if you defeat a direction, you have to go in another direction. But some people seem bent on not going anywhere. So the crisis continues in a way that needs resolution, and we have to work on it. Now, some aspects of this crisis have to do with the fact that people are being marginalized from politics and from the political process. I don't know if you all recall a gentleman called Ross Perot in the United States, a billionaire, who joined the presidential race in US elections at a certain point in time. At that point in time, the polls in the US were showing that the leading candidate in the electoral polls was none of the above. So that the US people were rejecting this idea of going to vote and replace one with the next and keep tossing and going to and fro and going nowhere. Similarly, I've seen in The Guardian of the UK, they have just reported that a survey finds that 27% of the electorate is planning to support any minority party, but none of the two major parties. So, none of the above. Now, Perot jumped into the election race, and then he said, okay, vote for that guy. Yeah. I gone. Right, recently, another billionaire in the US played around with election politics and popularized himself again and left. So the people are left out of it. And in 1989, we had a serious development, which is, how the Catholics put it, outward and visible sign of an inward, and I forget the other term, grace. But the Berlin Wall falling was supposed to be the sign. What it marked was the end of bipolar division in the world, actually. And because of that, one of the things that we are seeing these days is the resurgence of coalition politics. I say resurgence because there's a photograph that I always have vivid in my mind of three gentlemen sitting on a ship somewhere in the ocean during World War II. One was the president of the US, the other was the prime minister of England, and the third was Joseph Stalin of the Soviet Union. And those three gentlemen would never be sitting on a warship anywhere in the world at any point in time unless there was a coalition that was formed. And that coalition was to defeat Nazism. And so we have a resurgence of coalition politics nowadays in the form of coalitions to govern. And there is a demand, I think, in this whole period following 1989 for what I call democratic renewal. This marginalization aspect, one of the things is that you have low and declining voter turnouts. Thanks to TSTT, I haven't been for the last 2 days to be on the internet more than 4 minutes at a time. And between yesterday and this morning, not at all. Because the technology is so good, we've gone to 4G and you can't get on 3G or DSL or anything else. And when I called TSTT last night, the guy in India says to me, oh, we are experiencing technical problems and we are working on it. So, but I still can't log on for more than 4 minutes today. But looking at the EBC's historical records, at one point in Trinidad and Tobago, we actually had 80-something% of the electorate vote in 1956. And since then, we haven't hit 70. Just before the World War. In the bad old Soviet Union, under the bad old Stalin, 90-something% of the electorate voted to elect representatives throughout the Soviet Union. Soviet Union is not Trinidad, it's not a rock, it's a huge place. And people hear of the percentages of people who vote in Cuba and they think, well, maybe Castro still have some secret weapon somewhere forcing people to go and vote. But why is it we can't get people to vote? And in Canada, for example, they've had recent elections where they came out of a coalition and have gone back to the two-party thing. And they got 2-point-something% more people to vote than in the previous election. So it's not a TNT thing, it's a worldwide thing. There's also reports of declining membership in political parties. And politicians are treating people as vote banks. We actually went down between 2002 and 2007. And having been a candidate in 2007, I think there was a fair amount of enthusiasm in the campaign, but on election day, less people voted than the previous election. Now, this notion of party memberships growing, are they growing or are they